Hello, everyone, and welcome to Garden Side Chats. I'm your host, Mrs. Lanclose, and today our topic is symbolism in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Let's begin with a pretty easy symbol, one that we've already talked about before, and that's the big cake that Miss Maudie makes for Jem after the trial. Now, this cake is symbolic of Jem's movement into adulthood. Miss Maudie recognizes that Jem is growing up, and while he's not big enough for the entire cake, he certainly is ready for a slice out of the cake, a slice out of adulthood. So remember, he's making steps in his maturing process. A second symbol is that of the courthouse. Now, we touched on this just a little bit in our trivia game, but let's look at the courthouse more closely. So turn it with me, if you will, to chapter 16. And toward the end of the chapter, or maybe more in the middle, you'll find a paragraph beginning, "The Macomb County Courthouse was faintly reminiscent of Arlington in one respect." So that's where we'll pick up. And while you're finding your place, I just want to remind you that in chapter 1, we're told that the courthouse sags in the middle. So keep that detail in mind. The concrete pillars supporting its south roof were too heavy for their light burden. The pillars were all that remained standing when the original courthouse burned in 1856. Another courthouse was built around them. It's better to say built in spite of them. But for the south porch, the Macomb County Courthouse was early Victorian, presenting an unoffensive vista when seen from the north. From the other side, however, Greek Revival columns clashed with a big 19th century clock tower housing a rusty, unreliable instrument, a view indicating a people determined to preserve every physical scrap of the past. So a few details should have popped out at you. One is the courthouse has the original columns on the south side, and they are Greek Revival in style. So the original courthouse burned down, and the second courthouse was built around these columns. However, the majority of the courthouse is Victorian in its architectural style. The clock is 19th century in its style. So you have a mix of 3 different architectural styles in the courthouse building. The function of the clock is unreliable. It's rusty. It does not keep time. So when we look at these details, we draw some conclusions about what the courthouse building symbolizes. It symbolizes really 2 things: that Macomb is stuck in old ideas and old ways. The clock doesn't keep time. The clock doesn't keep up with changing time. Macomb doesn't keep up with changing time and changing ideas. The town is clinging to tradition. When we look at the mix of architectural styles, when we look at the unreliability of the clock, when we look at the fact that the courthouse sags, we realize that the courthouse, which is supposed to be a symbol of justice, is actually a symbol of the broken justice system in Macomb County. There is justice for some, but not for all. Moving on to a third symbol in the novel, that is the snow on the mountain camellia flower that Ms. Dubose sends Jem in that candy box after she dies. So if you remember, this comes at the very end of chapter 11. Before Ms. Dubose passes away, she has her maid fix up a candy box with a perfect snow on the mountain camellia flower inside. When Jem receives the candy box and opens it, he actually screams as his eyes are nearly popping out of his head. Old hell devil, why can't she leave me alone?" throws the gift onto the floor. Atticus comes along and helps him see. I think it was her way of telling you everything's all right now. Everything's all right. So it seems like this flower is a symbol of two things: forgiveness. Jim served his time, so to speak. He made things right by going to her house and reading to her, making up for what he did. And according to Atticus, Miss Dubose is trying to say, it's okay, I forgive you, things are made right between us. But then taking it a step farther, it seems like this flower is also a symbol of restoration. Ms. Dubose dies free of her morphine addiction. She dies in her right mind, fully restored, so to speak. The camellias are obviously restored to good health as she sends him a perfect snow on the mountain camellia flower. So forgiveness and restoration. The flowers are healed. Ms. Dubose is healed. Conflict is healed between Jim and Ms. Dubose. Let's move on to another symbol in the novel, and that is the geraniums. Now, remember, these are the geraniums that Mayella Ewell keeps, and she keeps them, the book tells us, as well as Miss Maudie. And Miss Maudie is a very fine gardener. So the geraniums are beautiful. They are in chipped up pots that she found when she gleaned from the dump. But they are the one bright spot in the Ewell's yard that looks like, the book tells us, the playground of an insane child. So these geraniums stand out as being different from everything else on the Ewell place. Mayella stands out as different from the other Ewells in a few regards, not in every way, but in a few ways. Tom points out, and this is in chapter 19, that she seemed to try more than the rest of them. Scout actually says in chapter 19, and I turn there, Mayella looked as if she tried to keep clean. This is at the beginning of chapter 18, excuse me. And I was reminded of the row of red geraniums in the Ewell yard. So Mayella is different in some respects from the other Ewells. She tries harder. She tries to be responsible for the family even at her young age. She tries to keep clean when the rest of the Ewells are filthy. She tries to care for and tend these geraniums. Obviously, though, as Atticus points out in his cross-examination of her, she is lonely. She is abused. She is unloved. But she desires something better. And it seems like those red geraniums are symbolic of her desire to escape her current situation, to find something better. Now, she fails miserably in her attempt to escape. But keep in mind, and so she's unable to escape, but keep in mind that those geraniums, as beautiful as they are planted in chipped up old pots found in the dump. So even though Mayella desires to escape, she can't really escape her background and her family. Now, we feel pity for Mayella in this regard. We feel sorry for her, that she's abused, that she's lonely, that she has a ton of responsibility on her shoulders taking care of all these children when it's really her dad's responsibility. We feel sorry for her that her dad takes all of the welfare money and spends it on alcohol instead of on things that the family needs. But as Atticus says, I'm going to read this out loud. That's Susie in the background, barking at something. In Atticus's closing arguments, he says, I have nothing but pity in my heart for the chief witness of the state. So, like us, Susie, oh, she's going to get something. So, like us, we pity Mayella and her sad situation. Susie, but also like Atticus. As the text goes on, it says, my pity does not extend so far as to her putting a man's life at stake, which she has done in an effort to get rid of her own guilt. So we're not taken in by Mayella's crying on the stand. We're not taken in by the fact that she acts frightened when she's being cross-examined by Atticus. We're not taken in by her fragile appearance. Scout actually tells us in the courtroom scene, she seemed somehow fragile looking, but when she sat facing us in the witness chair, she became what she was, a thick-bodied girl, accustomed to strenuous labor. And then later in that scene, and this is in chapter 18, it says, apparently Mayella's recital had given her confidence, but it was not her father's brash kind. There was something stealthy about hers, like a steady-eyed cat with a twitchy tail. So a steady-eyed cat with a twitchy tail is after prey, and she is after the death of Tom Robinson to alleviate her of her guilt. And we also remember her boldness with the jury. Well, she says to the jury, appealing to their Southern gentleman protective side, if you fine fancy gentlemen don't want to do nothing about it, then you're all yellow stinking cowards, the lot of you. So she, like her dad, tries to stir up their emotions of racism. She calls them cowards if they don't stand up for her and what's been done to her. So yes, we do pity her. We do see that she desires a better life. She desires escape. But like Atticus, our pity doesn't extend so far as she is trying to end the life of an innocent man. So those geraniums, a symbol of Mayella Ewell's desire for escape. So those are all the symbols for part 1. So tune in to Symbolism part 2, where we'll talk about the symbolic mockingbirds in the novel and where the novel gets its title. So thanks for listening, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.